I want to ask you about what the former Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, said following this interview. He implied that there's actually much more about what Shamima did when she was in ISIS than the public are aware of. And he said very clearly, if the public were to become aware of what she did, we would agree with his decision to strip her of British citizenship. What's he referring to?
Well, we don't really have any idea. So it's in his hands as to whether he makes that public or not. And we say that it isn't insurmountable for a formula to be agreed, whereby information about the alleged accusations can come forward in open court without giving up sources. So it's more suspicious that Sajid Javid says, look, if only you saw what I saw, then you would agree with me. Well, the fact is that, you know, it's within his power to let us see what he's seen, rather than just make accusations that don't have supporting evidence behind them.
Do you, on the record, deny that Shamima was aware of the Manchester bombing and also these allegations that she actually helped suicide bombers get into their clothes in order to go on suicide attacks, which has been claimed?
So I haven't said that. Shamima makes those claims. In terms of the actual the suicide vests, those she's very stringently and forcefully denied any involvement with from the very off. Now, we recall that though that information was supposed to be securitized, according to the Home Secretary, but it actually leaked from his office to a journalist. And so the idea that that's very important information that was protected is somewhat belied by the fact it was leaked to the press itself. So what we'd like to know is what the basis of that assessment was, because Shamima very clearly denies that.
Are you behind this makeover, Tasnim? What's this all about? When we first saw Shamima, she was in the hijab. All of a sudden, she's looking like a Western woman. Is this all a PR ploy that you've very carefully crafted to try and get public support?
Sorry, that's a pretty wild accusation. I've never actually spoken to Shamima Begum. I'm her family's lawyer.
I'm just asking the question. I'm asking the question.
Right, well, I'm a lawyer, not Jimmy Chu, so no.
What do you think it's about? And do you think it's genuine?
Sorry, in terms of a makeover?
Well, why does she look so different? Why is she dressed all of a sudden like a Westerner?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, you'll have to ask her if she's changed her style. I mean, there was a time where there was a Shamima Begum, who was a normal schoolgirl from Bethnal Green in London, who didn't dress like you've seen her when she first appeared in 2019 on the front pages in a burqa and a niqab. She was a normal schoolgirl. She was then radicalized, and she went to a war zone where ISIS imposed a certain dress code on pain of punishment through beatings and ultimately execution. So at that point, she was obviously radicalized, and she was wearing the clothing of the region. So we're entirely, in a phase where she may, because of the new influences around her, in a much more liberal camp, with the help of the SDF, who spent a lot of time with her, have reverted back to a pre-2015 position.
Can you understand the scepticism of someone like me? She wants to get back into the UK. She's appearing on a populist breakfast television show, being interviewed by Richard Madeley and Susanna Reid. This feels like some sort of PR campaign. And she's also taking back previous statements that she made. I mean, when she was first interviewed in the camp initially in Syria, she said that the Manchester Arena bombing, which killed all of those Brits, including an 8-year-old girl, going to an Ariana Grande concert, she said that was justified. Now she says she didn't even know about the Manchester Arena bombing.
So this is the type of exercise that's normal, is where you take somebody's words from before and you compare them to where they are now, and you look for consistency and you look for inconsistency. The issue here, though, is that you also have to look at the context. So it's incorrect to say that she's in the same camp in Syria. She isn't. When she was first interviewed by Anthony Lloyd for the Times, sorry, so she was in
I understand she's moved camps.
Right. So, but the context of that's important. Al Hol camp had 80,000 people in it and was almost lawless. It was effectively controlled by hardcore ISIS adherents, women, who had a track record of setting fire to other women and children, murdering them if they didn't support ISIS. So, in terms of what she could say openly in that camp, that was very, very narrow, what she could say. She couldn't say too much. She'd subsequently then been moved to Al Roj camp, which has got 2,500 people in it, much more securely controlled, with a very low element of hardened ISIS supporters. There are no burnings of people and human beings and tents there. So in this new context in Al Roj, then she can be a lot more freer with what she says. But you rightly state, what she says needs examination, and it needs examination free of threat, which really wouldn't happen in a camp surrounded by 80,000 potentially ISIS adherents still.
Why do you think that the British people should accept Shamima Begum returning to the UK? We don't trust her. We believe that she left the country knowing that she was joining a terrorist organisation. And we have the former Home Secretary, current Cabinet Minister Sajid Javid saying stripping her of British citizenship was perfectly legal. Why on earth should the British public accept this woman setting foot back in this country again?
You see, we're no longer under Roman rule, so we don't decide the fate of human beings by populist thumbs up or thumbs down in a gladiatorial games. We have the rule of law, which is what happens in courts, and that is much more devoid of the sort of populist emotion that goes on. The reason we have a rule of law is because our society's evolved from just the gladiatorial aspect in modern society, and we have a separation of powers, and there are consequences to our decisions. So, for example, with Shamima Begum, she's certainly born in the UK, brought up in the UK, educated in the UK, radicalised in the UK. So she's a Brit, really. The way that Sajid Javid decides to palm her off onto Bangladesh, well, Bangladesh is simply not going to accept that. And now with Sajid Javid's decision set a precedent. So where we've got terrorists or extremists who come from other countries, like Abu Qatada, Abu Hamza and what have you, we have exported them. We've basically said that the countries they came from have to take them back, rightly so. But those countries may now take a very dim view of that approach and just adopt the same approach that Britain's taken. They will simply say now that, well, sorry, too bad, it's your problem. You've taken them on the same basis that you've forced Shamima Begum onto another country. We'll force ours back onto yours and not take them back. So we'll end up in a sort of tit-for-tat scenario with countries blocking the repatriation or the forced repatriation of their own homegrown terrorists and extremists.
Tasnim, I just need to ask you why you tweeted a picture of the Taliban as the Afghanistan government fell with the lyrics of a Thin Lizzy song, "The Boys Are Back in Town." Do you accept that was highly inappropriate?
Well, the song is actually from 1977. It's to do with the Quality Street gang from Manchester, who were a criminal gang, who then returned back to Manchester from a sojourn. So I thought it was rather appropriate that a small criminal gang have now gone back to their hometown, and that's where the comparator was, really.
OK, so you weren't supporting the Taliban in any way, to clarify?
But you'll find that Guido Fawkes, around the same time, actually tweeted exactly the same thing. And to a lot of hilarious acclaim, apparently. So he, being a right-wing Twitterati, is seen in one vein, but it seems that if I, with a different complexion, tweet something very similar, then it's read in a completely different context. So I find that interesting.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.